The Education Secretary was too scared to face questions today on one of the biggest scandals to hit the Conservative Party in recent years. Well, apart from Partygate and changing rules to protect friends and money for donors for PPDs. Anyway, the list goes on. But actually, this one involves children. And I'm not talking about the one where the footballer had to shame them into feeding them during the summer recess. No, what this is actually where buildings could fall on top of them. So instead of the Education Secretary, they sent out the Chancellor to make a complete hash of the situation. In the clip I'm about to show you, you can see that he clearly hasn't got a clue. Trevor Phillips does a good job of holding them to account, and they can't actually answer any basic questions on how long they've known about these problems or how many schools are actually affected. Now, for those of you not aware, this is all to do with rack, a type of concrete that wasn't the best quality from what I can assume, and over time it erodes. These buildings need to be repaired or they collapse, preferably when children are not inside them. See, the Conservative Party scrapped the Labour government's school rebuilding programme because, they wanted to save money or give it to their donor friends. But in this case, these schools would have been rebuilt by now and they wouldn't have had this problem. But instead, they decided not to spend the money on public services. And now 3 days before the children are about to go back to school, they're in a bit of a flap because they don't know how many schools could collapse at any moment. So instead of the Education Secretary answering questions, she put out a very weird video with some dodgy dance music that she seemed to think was more appropriate than being held to account. So in the meantime, you'll have to put up with Jeremy Hunt, the Chancellor, looking rather foolish.
So the issue of identifying the risk is very important. Can you say to a parent who has to send their child to school tomorrow that they can be confident, if they haven't been told that there's a risk, that their child will be safe?
Well, we are doing everything we can to make sure that is the case. We can absolutely promise that the government will take action immediately when we know there is any kind of risk, but also more broadly in terms of my decisions as Chancellor, that we will prioritise spending money to sort out these problems where that needs to happen. And in my first autumn statement, we announced an extra £2.3 billion for schools. That was in a context of having to cut back public spending in other areas. So we are absolutely committed to doing what it takes to make sure our schools are safe.
Forgive me for pressing on this, but what you've said so far adds up to a simple statement. You don't know. You don't know how many schools, you don't know how many courts, you don't know how many hospitals, and worst of all, you don't know which ones. You owe it to the public simply to sometimes say, we just don't know.
I don't think that's a fair characterisation, Trevor, of what's been happening.
Well, you can't tell me that you do know. You haven't told me what the number is.
I'm telling you that what the government has been doing is an exhaustive programme of contacting every school to try and identify where the risk is and acting immediately we find the information. Now, obviously, we might find new information in the weeks or months ahead. We will act on it. But in terms of the information that we have in front of us to date, we have acted immediately. We will continue to act. We will continue to invest. This is a problem that dates right the way back to the 1980s, and we will do what it takes to make sure that children are safe.
The reason this matters is it's a matter of trust in government. And if we look at the record, it doesn't inspire. Your fellow ministers were told about this risk more than a decade ago when you launched, in fact, you cancelled some of the schools building programme. You were told again about the urgency of it after the single well incident in 2018. You didn't really do anything.
Well, I think that is just wrong. The Building Schools for the Future programme was changed, and it was changed in order to reduce the cost of building more schools so that we could spend more money on repairs to the schools, the estate we had. In 2019, when Rishi Sunak was Prime Minister, he dramatically increased the capital budget across government, which showed our commitment to the public estate. When I was Chancellor, I protected those increases in cash terms. So we're absolutely committed to investing in the public realm. Well, I don't think you can say that, Trevor, with respect. As soon as problems have been identified, we started a huge survey of every single school in the country so we could identify where these problems are. And I think it's very important to reassure parents that where there is an issue, as soon as we find out about it, we will act.
Jeremy Hunt didn't think Brexit has made the country poorer, and to see his bizarre reasoning, you'll need to watch the video that's on the screen now. Don't forget to hit the like button. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.